Welcome to Why Were Witches Burned Part 2. In this video, I'm going to dive into some of the myths and insights that we can learn from this period of history. So there are a lot of questions that I've come across about this time in history. One of the biggest is how many witches were burned in Salem. So I'm going to answer that question. I'm also going to talk about burning at the stake as a phenomenon. I'm also going to discuss who is the first witch who is recorded to have been burned at the stake. I'm going to address a couple myths like all witches were women, talk a little bit about why they were burned specifically, and one of the biggest myths about the Spanish Inquisition. Let's go. So the first question, how many women were burned in Salem at the Salem witch trials? Actually, none. So contrary to popular belief, actually no witches were burned at the Salem witch trials. 20 people were executed, but 19 of them were hanged. And one of them was a man, and he was pressed to death while refusing to confess. In general, witches actually weren't burnt at the stake very often. Most often, especially in English-speaking countries, they were hung first and then sometimes their bodies were burned because it was believed that if they were burned, they couldn't come and they couldn't resurrect on Judgment Day. And in Scotland, they were strangled before they were burned. So the first famous witch hunt, which resulted in the death of a witch, was that of the philosopher and mathematician Hypatia. Now, Hypatia threatened the status and the power of Saint Cyril in Alexandria back in 415 AD. And so she was rooted out and she was basically denounced as a witch and discovered to be a witch because she was too powerful. And from there is where we get the idea that it is dangerous as a woman. That's one of the places that we got the idea that it's dangerous as a woman to have too much power and to threaten the status of men. Now, this turned into a big belief around witch hunts. And the truth is, based on the research that I've done and I've seen, that wasn't the primary driver of the witch hunts, to root out women of power and influence. I'm sure that it didn't help and those women were often targeted, but really the source and the cause of the witch hunts was not that. It may have been an unconscious driver of that, however. And in fact, there's a myth that all witches, or even most of the witches, were women. In some places, like in Scandinavia, there were actually more men who were denounced and killed for being witches than there were women. Another myth that gets around a lot, and one that I completely subscribed to for a long time, was the idea that witches were actually priestesses or women who worshipped the goddess in ancient pagan rituals. Actually, the research that we have available doesn't indicate that at all. It doesn't indicate that there was any evidence that these women were actually practicing something, which is actually scarier and sadder in my opinion. The truth is they were just normal women who were odd, unusual, weird, different, unliked, or they were just the unlucky recipient of someone being tortured and splurting out their name in the middle of being tortured and saying, well, it wasn't me, it was this person. So actually, there isn't any evidence that most witchcraft had anything to do with any real pagan traditions or Celtics or goddess worshiping or any of that sort of thing. Let me take a little quick break here and ask, if you like this video, if this is sparking something in you, would you please comment below? This is an unusual topic for me. I want to know how you feel about it, if this is something you want more of. So let me know, and while you're at it, please like and subscribe. So why were witches burned? Why did this happen? What's the real underlying root cause of this? Well, the more research I do, the more I think it was actually economics. I believe, based on a lot of different theories, a lot of studies, a lot of research, that actually it was about market competition among churches, that it was a way for churches to gain power over each other. One way that a church could gain followers was to showcase its witch hunting prowess. This allowed them to raise money because when people are in fear, right, they're easier to control. And that's the second part of the theory, which is that it's a way to control people and gain power. Now, back in this time of the witch hunts, churches were some of the most powerful, if not the most powerful institutions in communities, in nations, really in the entire region of Europe and even in the colonies. And so gaining power, humans all throughout history, that's been a driver of all sorts of nefarious activity. And so that leads me to the question of whether the Spanish Inquisition was the main driver of the witch hunts. And actually, it looks like it wasn't. While they had a big hand in propagating the fear, the real perpetrators of the witch hunts tended to be Lutheran, Calvinist, some of the Protestant churches at the time. So from all of that I've just shared, I'd like to share with you a couple of insights about this. And one of which was brought to me by the guy behind the camera right now. His name is Brent. And he let me know that actually at the Salem witch trials, which I did not know this, the lawyers actually presented evidence of the soul contracts that these witches made with the devil. They actually presented papers that said that they were exchanging their soul for all these things, which to me is just extraordinary. And it shows us the lengths to which people will go to propagate and support a belief. And I think that this is really interesting, especially right now, when we're in a time where there's so much fear, there's so much going on, so much blame, so much complaint, right? And there's so much misinformation floating around, and not just floating around, but actually actively being propagated by some of the powers that be. And it's amazing to me to see how, we think that we've become so civilized and we think that we've changed so much from 100 or 200 years ago, when actually, have we really changed that much? Once people have a belief in their mind, they will see the world full of evidence for that belief. And it's very, very hard to change their mind. Once these people had the idea these are witches, then they were willing to go to extraordinary lengths to prove that belief and to even manufacture evidence. I'm even going to go out on a limb here and guess that they thought they were doing something good. I don't think that they thought that they were evil. I think that they thought that they were puritanical, that they were moral, that they were ethical, and they were doing what they thought God or the higher power wanted them to do to make the world a better place. I really truly believe that they did not think that they were doing bad things, but ultimately they did do bad things in the name of this morality and this belief system. So, I invite you to consider that. Where in your life are you stuck in a perspective and manufacturing evidence to support that perspective? Where in your life are you unwilling to see the truth? And I'm asking myself the exact same question, just as I'm asking it to you, because I know that all of us have blind spots. All of us have beliefs and have the ways of looking at the world that are not reality. I invite you, and I'm inviting myself, to challenge those beliefs and live a life looking for truth, supported by love, looking for the best in people, looking for the ways that we can uplift and inspire rather than blame and crack down and witch hunt people. So that's my take on the witch hunts. I hope that you enjoyed this very unusual topic for me to cover today.